we hit it lucky. Our agent contacted us a few days ago. Seeing we got approached with similar offers, both on the Cappy world of Chamdo. One was from Askai, Mr. Enigma, but his checks are always good. The other, well, according to our agent, Slimy didn't even begin to describe him. Askai wants us to defend his client's property. Mr. Slime wants us to blow it up. Choices, choices. What's a merc to do?
"3071 opened with the welcome news of the birth of Sun Tzu's second child, Daoshan. At the same time, the CCAF remained in the midst of refitting and redeployment toward Corward worlds. This large-scale movement of regular forces to the primary front and key interior systems left border worlds, particularly those near the Federate Suns and the Free Worlds League, relatively exposed, relying largely on planetary militias to deter potential invasions. Although the likelihood of such attacks was low due to the Inner Sphere's focus on the Blakish threat, the risk was not negligible. One such attack occurred on Turin, where the Duchy of Endurian hired the Golden Boys mercenary unit to raid a local supply depot. At the time, only the 212th Flying Furies Jump Infantry Regiment was stationed on the planet. Ironically, the defenders were saved by a concurrent raid launched by Blake's force. The Golden Boys were nearly annihilated, but managed to withdraw off-world. The Blakes, however, were lured into a trap set by the retreating mercenaries, a situation the Flying Furies quickly exploited, destroying the attackers. In response to the vulnerability exposed by this incident, the Capellan Confederation initiated a large-scale mercenary recruitment drive to reinforce planetary garrisons. For example, the Green Machine Company was contracted to strengthen Ares' militia following the departure of the 4th Big Mac, and Turin itself later received mercenary Battletech support. As part of an internal purge of Word of Blake elements, the Maskarovka allegedly funded and orchestrated widespread anti-Blakist riots throughout the Confederation, targeting installations such as HPG stations. In several locations, including Jasmine, mobs overran facilities and killed on-site technicians. With Blakist personnel eliminated, these stations effectively fell under state control. Comstar offered assistance to restore HPG operations, but Chancellor Sun Tzu refused them entry. While this decision likely aimed to maintain state control, it may also reflect a complete loss of trust in the supposedly neutral organization. Regardless, HPG communications within the Confederation became, as Comstar described, patchy at best. The Word of Blake did not accept these losses without retaliation. On March 20th, Chesterton was attacked by forces initially believed to be a Capellan Warrior House unit. These attackers quickly overwhelmed the defending Davion militia. However, an FSNS wartime correspondent discovered that the Capellan troops were in fact genetically and cybernetically modified warriors bearing the symbol of Kali. The revelation of Warrior House Rakshasa shocked both the Federated Sons and the Capellan Confederation. Chancellor Sun Tzu Lao promptly issued a communique to Regent Prince Tancred Sandoval, condemning the attack and denying any knowledge of the unit's existence, while promising to pursue those responsible. It was later revealed that Sun Tzu's sister, Kali Lao, had created 2 secret warrior houses with Word of Blake support. The Chesterton attack was likely an attempt to reignite war between the Capellan Confederation and the Federated Sons. In September, the Federated Sons launched a retaliatory strike against Rakshasa forces on Highspire. At least 3 jump ships entered the system via a pirate point, but only one returned, and without its dropships. During this operation, the previously hidden Warrior House White Tigers was discovered. Despite their distance from the main front, the Magistracy of Canopus became a target due to its alliance with the Confederation. In late 3068, the Magistracy was hit with the HPG blackout. By this time, Naomi Centrella was leading the Canopian contingent in Operation Thunderstrike. Magistrates Amma and Canopian leadership were soon placed under house arrest after the Word moved to occupy the palace, effectively taking control of the state. The magistrates and the military leaders quickly began organizing an underground resistance on all Canopian worlds. Continued Canopian partisan activities culminated in April 3071 when the Word of Blake openly began attacking Canopian worlds. On Canopus, the Blakists aimed to eliminate Magistrates Emma Centrella and Senior General Haji Doru. After besieging the capital, Crimson, Blakist forces firebombed the city using a napalm-like aerosol, causing tens of thousands of deaths. Both leaders were reportedly killed, though their bodies were never recovered. This uncertainty sustained local resistance. 4 months later, in late August, Ramil's raiders conducted a high-risk combat drop into the city. Despite heavy resistance and significant casualties, they successfully extracted Senior General Doru. The magistrates, however, was not found and was later presumed dead. At the same time, the Capellan world of Necromo went silent. During Operation Thunderstrike, Kittery had been seized by the Word of Blake under the pretense of acting for the Capellan Confederation. Although a Capellan government was installed, Blake's forces never left. When relations deteriorated, they assumed full control, along with neighboring systems, forming an operational enclave within both Capellan and Federated Suns territory. Across these worlds, large prison camps were established for captives, reportedly serving both as re-education centers and sources of human experimentation. Local population resisted occupation through acts the Blakists labeled as terrorism, including sabotage of infrastructure and attacks on supply lines. Blakist sources claim these actions extended to targeting civilian sites and were supported by Comstar, led by a figure known as Stone. While these claims may be exaggerated or fabricated, Devlin Stone himself was real. Of unknown origin, he emerged as a leader who unified resistance forces across Kittery. Under his leadership, the population overthrew the occupying Blakists. The uprising continued in 3072 when Stone established a de facto control over the region without returning it to either the Federated Suns or the Capellan Confederation, potentially marking the birth of a new state. 3071 concluded with unexpected good news for the Capellan Confederation. David Lear, the 17-year-old son of Kai Allet, previously presumed dead after the disappearance of the passenger vessel Capellan Star, was discovered alive. Captured by Blake's raiders, he had spent the past year in prison on Kittery, where he assisted Devlin Stone in both escape efforts and the organization of the resistance. Capellan reports indicate that David intends to remain on the planet to help prepare it for reintegration into the Confederation. Buenos Aires food found its way to 25 billion customers on 6 different worlds. No more. But as bad as that was, the worst was yet to come. The plague cocktail released a new weapon. It manifested as an influenza variant, something to which no one had any immunity. First pass mortality rate was approximately 72%. Whole families died. Whole towns died. Whole cities died. But not anymore. All members of the population have been isolated, remaining at home where possible or gathered together in schools, libraries, and sports stadiums. The Wobies have won the first round, but we're not done. "3072 proved to be a surprisingly quiet year for the Capellan Federation. No major offensives or strategic movements of note were publicly reported. While the Capellan Confederation armed forces were undoubtedly engaged against the Word of Blake in covert regions, little information emerged regarding their operations. As the rest of the Inner Sphere and the Clan Occupation Zone began securing significant victories, and discussions of a grand coalition against the Blakists intensified, the Confederation remained notably isolated in its war effort. This isolation may have been intentional. Chancellor Sun Tzu Lao could have sought to reinforce internal unity and strengthen his political grip by demonstrating that the Confederation required no assistance to survive the jihad. Such a narrative would align closely with the ideals of Xing Sheng, that the Capellan Confederation possessed the strength, resilience, and self-reliance necessary to overcome even a crisis of this magnitude. only 3 major developments during the year directly involved the Confederation. The first occurred in March, when the CCAF committed a substantial force to aid a periphery ally to expel Blakist invaders from the magistracy of Canopus. Then, in April, the ward of Buenos Aires suffered one of the most devastating biochemical attacks of the jihad. The engineered contagion initially destroyed nearly the planet's entire food supply before mutating to infect livestock populations. It later evolved again, this time targeting humans on a global scale with a mortality rate estimated at 72%. The catastrophe rendered the planet effectively uninhabitable. Buenos Aires was ultimately abandoned and classified as a dead world, a status it retains to the present day. By mid-year, Rabala, apparently under Blakey's occupation for some time, was liberated by the Rabala Home Guard alongside supporting mercenary forces. Sangshao Meridian Ox led the liberation effort against the 44th Shadow Division, which was reinforced by mercenary units and Mane Domini operatives. Despite expectations of a prolonged battle, the conflict remained relatively limited in scale. The Blakists and their allies eventually conducted a full withdrawal from the planet, though they abducted a dozen civilian hostages before departing. At the beginning of the following year, leaders from across the Innisphere and the clan occupation zone gathered in Art Royal to discuss the formation of a united front against the Word of Blake. Representatives from Clan Ghostbear, Comstar, Clan Jade Falcon, the Federated Sons, the Free Worlds League, the Lyran Alliance, Wolf's Dragoons, Clan Wolf in Exile, the Draconis Combine, Snort's Irregulars, and the Circanus Federation attended the summit. The Capellan Confederation, however, was notably absent. In hindsight, this absence may have spared the Confederation's leadership from catastrophe. During the conference, Fritz Donner, delegate of the Circanus Federation, unknowingly carried an explosive device surgically grafted into a skeleton by the Word of Blake. The resulting detonation, later known as the Donner Bomb Incident, killed numerous attendees, including Bjorn Jorgensen, Khan of Clan Ghostbear. Had Chancellor Sun Tzu Lao attended the summit, he too might have been among the dead. The Capellan Confederation returned to prominence in 3073 and 74. The renewed activity began in April 3073, when the recently uncovered Warrior House White Tigers launched a brutal raid against Les Halles, a world flying the banner of the Orient Protectorate, one of the many successor states born from the fragmentation of the Free Worlds League. Possibly unaware of the existence of the false warrior houses, the Protectorate likely interpreted the attack as direct Capellan aggression. In retaliation, Protectorate forces conducted counter-raids against 3 Capellan worlds in May. Following these attacks, the Confederation initiated a series of military operations throughout former League territory aimed at eliminating Blakist elements and discouraging further incursions from League successor states. At the end of June, a joint CCAF and MAF strike force assaulted Aspropagas in the Duchy of Endurian. The world had served as a staging point for the Blakist 41st Shadow Division, which had been conducting operations against the magistracy of Canopus. Over 12 days of sustained combat, the Capellan Canopian force systematically dismantled the majority of the Blakist presence on the planet. 1 month later, a Capellan naval task force attacked the orbital shipyards above Shuen 1, employing multiple nuclear strikes against the station. This assault served both as retaliation for the May raids and as a warning to the Orient Protectorate against conducting further military operations into Confederation territory. Seeking to avoid the opening of another front amid the chaos consuming the fractured Free Worlds League, the now named Thomas Hallas requested an audience with Chancellor Sun Tzu Lao in August. Although no longer the de jure ruler of the League as a unified state, Hallas nevertheless succeeded in negotiating a ceasefire between the Capellan Confederation and the various League successor states. During the diplomatic visit, the Word of Blake attempted to assassinate Hallas, but the Mascarovka successfully foiled the operation. No major developments occurred until October. By this point, Sun Tzu Lao likely believed the CCAF had recovered sufficiently to permit the return of the Magistracy Armed Forces contingent his wife had provided during Operation Thunderstrike. The troops were subsequently released to return home. Tragedy nearly followed little more than a week later when a dropship intended to transport Magistrates Naomi Centrella Lao exploded moments before she was scheduled to board. Fortunately, the Duchess had not yet embarked when the bomb detonated. The assassination attempt was later attributed to the word of Blake. 3073 concluded with the capture of Kali Lao, who was finally brought before Chancellor Sun Tzu to face charges of treason and collaboration with the enemy. Her ultimate fate remains unknown. 3074 opened disastrously with yet another attack on Xi'an. The two secret warrior houses launched an assault against the Forbidden City, possibly in an attempt to rescue Kali Lao or to avenge her. However, at the height of the battle, Warrior House White Tigers abruptly turned on their counterparts in House Rakshasa. The sudden betrayal enabled the shocked defenders to destroy both warrior houses, along with supporting Blake's forces. During later interrogations, surviving White Tigers members claimed that they had acted under secret orders from Kali Lao herself to oppose the word of Blake. According to these testimonies, the White Tigers had originally been created not to aid the Blakists, but to assist the Confederation in combating them from within. Whether this claim was genuine or merely an attempt at self-preservation remains uncertain. In February, another disaster struck, with the destruction of Warrior House Lusan in a Blakist ambush on Herotitus. Beyond this loss, however, 3074 passed without any major Capellan developments. The new year opened with a speech from Chancellor Sun Tzu Lao. In his address, he announced recent victories and praised the resilience of the Capellan people in their solitary struggle against the word of Blake. He urged citizens to remain steadfast and to believe that the spirit of Xing Sheng still burned brightly throughout the Confederation. External reports, however, painted a far darker picture. A leaked communique, possibly originating from the word of Blake or even Comstar, suggested that morale within the Confederation had fallen to historic lows and that the economy stood on the brink of collapse. An unconfirmed report from the MIIO further claimed that several frontline Capellan worlds had gone completely silent. The Capellans' refusal to permit Comstar personnel to operate HPG stations had severely hindered interstellar communications. In response, the Capellan Confederation Armed Forces established a courier relay network resembling a modernized Pony Express system. According to the MIIO report, however, the network was buckling under the strain of constant Blakist raids. Several worlds had allegedly become entirely isolated, leaving their fates unknown. A letter written later in June by a Capellan trooper hinted at the increasingly desperate measures being employed by the Confederation. According to the account, the CCAF had adopted a policy of widespread nuclear strikes against entrenched Blakist positions in an effort to reclaim occupied worlds. The deteriorating communication infrastructure may also have helped conceal the scale of these extreme tactics from the broader population. While the primary front remained obscured by the fog of war, developments in the periphery were far more clearly documented. In April, Magistrates Naomi Centrella Lao traveled to the Duchy of Andurian in an effort to rekindle the long-standing relationship between the Duchy and the Magistracy of Canopus. Historically, the two states had maintained close relations, often united in opposition to the Capellan Confederation. Naomi's marriage to Sun Tzu Lao had placed that relationship under strain, and the diplomatic visit sought to reassure the Duchy that the Magistracy's ties to the Confederation would not endanger Andurian interests. Later in August, Naomi personally led the final liberation of Canopus. Using her position as the Chancellor's wife, she secured the support of the elite Red Lancers Regiment and rapidly crushed the already weakened Blakist 34th Division. She was later seen personally leading her forces along the Highway of Enlightenment as liberation efforts continued across the world. Over the following months, the magistrates supervised the reconstruction of Crimson City, During a tour of the ruined Garden of Contemplation and the devastated Centrella University, Naomi reportedly vowed never again to allow such destruction to befall her ancestral home. Later in December, after personally selecting a Regency Council to oversee recovery efforts, Naomi Centrella Lau returned to the Confederation, likely to continue assisting her husband in the war against the Word of Blake. Before departing, she promised her people that she would return soon and ordered the Red Lancers to remain on Canopus to provide security during the planet's reconstruction. Although momentum appeared to be gradually shifting against the Word of Blake, the jihad remained far from over.